In tropical montane forests, sandy riverbanks and acidic bogs, pitcher plants are producing weird and wonderful traps to capture unsuspecting prey. But how do they capture their prey, and why do they need to eat insects anyway? Let's dig deeper. I think carnivorous plants are incredibly varied, especially the pitcher plants, but one thing I find particularly compelling about them is that they have a very beautiful object nature, and they have a kind of decorative sense that you get used to flowers. It's almost like you become flower blind, and then you see these pictures and you're like, is that an Art Nouveau jug? And the most interesting part of the plant is often the pitcher rather than the flower, which is a modified leaf, so it's a very unexpected object of beauty. My name is Jessy Challenger, and I work as a botanical horticulturalist in the Princess of Wales Conservatory. We have 10 different climatic zones, so we can grow quite a wide range of plants. I personally look after carnivorous and orchids. I think people find carnivorous plants interesting because they blur the boundary between what people consider plants and what people consider animals, because they eat in a more active way than other plants which absorb their nutrients through the soil. And so the idea of a plant having a mouth or any kind of body part is super interesting. Nepenthes plants are the tropical pitcher plants, and they're sometimes called monkey cups. They're predominantly from tropical Southeast Asia, and they are scrambling, climbing vines with highly modified leaves that have a tendril coming out of the end that turns into a cup-like structure, and that cup-like structure has a lot of specialized parts to it to enable it to efficiently trap its prey. Here we have a closer look at one of the pitchers that I was mentioning earlier, which is a cup-like structure on the end of a tendril which is attached to one of these long leathery leaves. The tendril acts like a grappling hook to help the plant achieve height so that it can distribute its pitchers throughout the canopy. The key features on a pitcher are the beautiful lip here around the entrance to the pitcher. This is called a peristome, and it has several specializations to help trap prey. This one has very slippery ridges all around, these sort of candy-colored ridges. They're incredibly slippery if you run your finger over that way. This is the lid, and its primary function is to keep rainwater out, but it also produces nectar. Nepenthes can have extrafloral nectaries throughout the plant, so they're trying to encourage insects into the trap. These fringes down the middle are called ladders, and they help guide insects up towards the lip where they'll slip in. Inside the cup is also very slippery, and it's impossible for anything once it's got in to really get out again. And they'll fall inside into a pool of digestive juices where they will be broken down and then absorbed through the tendril into the leaves. You can see here at the end of the leaves we have these curls, these tendrils, and these will hook round surrounding vines and then produce a pitcher. And you can see a really adorable baby pitcher here. Here's a good example of the leaf and the tendril coming off, and you see this curl. This would be hooking around a neighboring vine, and this is a baby pitcher, and you can see here that the lid is actually closed, so the pitcher plants produce their own digestive fluid. It's not rainwater and it's not external water, and then when it's mature the lid will pop open to reveal the inside. So here you can also see the flowering structure of the plant. They are either male or female, meaning that this plant will be either producing pollen or receptive flowers. It's a rather non-dramatic flower, and it's pollinated by small flying insects. Some of them smell like bad sweet corn. There's a lot of variety within pitcher shapes and structures between Nepenthes species, but even within the same species you might find different pitcher shapes. For example, this one has a different shape and size and patination, and the basal pitchers, which is what we call the pitchers that rest on the ground, than the aerial pitchers. Here's a close-up of one of the aerial pitchers, And you can see it's nice and smooth and long. And it's lacking that ladder that I showed you earlier. And that's because it's not resting on the ground and there are no crawling insects to crawl up the ladder. So this is actually one of my favorites. I just think it's so elegant, and then also the story is just beautiful. And this one eats woolly bat feces. So this is Nepenthes hemsliana, and it has, you might notice this little ridge here. This section turns out to be exactly the right size and humidity for a little woolly bat to come and roost in when it's sleeping. And then when it wakes up, it flies off and it poops before it flies, and this eats the poop. I also think it looks kind of like a saxophone, and I like to think that because they find it through echolocation, that it's kind of a musical sound and it's attracted to it, and then it gets inside. Here we're in the temperate carnivorous zone, which, as I said earlier, is the cooler carnivorous zone. And here is where you'll find the North American pitcher plants, the Sarracenia. They are sometimes called trumpet pitchers. They have a lot of similarities to the Nepenthes that we saw earlier, but they have, as you can see, quite different forms. So they are mostly upright pitchers, standing straight up from the ground, and they are one single modified leaf that is wrapped around. So Sarracenia are also pitcher traps, which means they are a cup-like structure with liquid in it that prey falls into. They have a lot of similarities to the Nepenthes that we looked at, but they have quite different forms. So most of them are upright growing, and they are sort of elegant and coming straight out of the ground like weird jugs. This one you can see here, it's also called a peristome on this one, the lip, which is also slippery, and the prey will slip inside of it. You can find the Sarracenia in North America, where you can also find the Venus flytrap. Sarracenia are predominantly from the southeast, which is also where the Venus flytrap is from, as they inhabit similar niches, but the flytrap is not a pitcher trap. The Sarracenia purpurea, which is the stubbier looking one that's oftentimes dark purple, is hardier than these Sarracenia, and you can find that one all the way up to Canada. Sarracenia often thrive in open, sunny environments with low nutrient, free draining but constantly wet soil, which can be either sand or accumulated peat at the bottom of the swamp. Fires often come through their habitats and help keep the surrounding vegetation from becoming full, thick, brushy forest, which would eventually dominate the Sarracenia. In the absence of being able to control them with fire, like they do in their native habitats, I have been to a garden where they cut them down with a hedge trimmer. However, this is quite a careful little display, so I'll be taking their leaves down, their pitchers down, with small secateurs in the winter. Sarracenia also have a variety of forms for different adaptations. I mentioned the purpurea earlier as being more hardy, but you'll also notice it has wide open lids. They don't really close off from the rainwater that much. And these ones have a much higher concentration of rainwater in them, and therefore are adapted to different prey, potentially including eating leaf litter. Unfortunately, they also eat salamanders, but it's unclear whether they're efficiently digesting them in the wild. You can also find a really cute, very specialized pitcher plant in Australia, localized in the southwest, called Cephalotus follicularis, and you might notice that it looks incredibly similar, not in form, but in pitcher form, to the Nepenthes. So as you can see, this is a very low-growing, ground-hugging little plant with very small, simple leaves, and then very small pitchers, which are also modified leaf structures. It produces both leaves and more or less of each type depending on the season or how much prey is available. The amazing similarities between the two extend to this ladder up the center, a lid to keep the rain out, a peristome, the lip around the trap, which also has ribs just like the Nepenthes. The fact that they look so similar to the Nepenthes is a really wonderful example of convergent evolution, which is sort of a brilliant demonstration of how nature will adapt to extreme environments or high demands and evolutionary pressure. This plant is in no way related to the Nepenthes that it looks so similar to, nor is it related to the Sarracenia. It's evolved these exact specific adaptations to catch prey just because the environment required it. I hope you've enjoyed learning a bit more about the pitcher plants that we have here at Kew, and thank you for watching, and I really hope that you're inspired to come along and visit so that you can see them in the flesh.
Thanks for watching this episode of Dig Deeper. If you like this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to learn more about the work that Kew does, visit our website for more information.